Listening to the Victory Sessions with Stephen K. Bannon, powered by Victory Film Group.
This is Stephen K. Bannon, the Victory Sessions, Talk Radio 790, KABC, Los Angeles, California, the capital of the Pacific. My guest, we're very blessed tonight to have Todd Palin, a guy I've gotten to know over the last year, and a stand-up guy. The film The Undefeated, which I was very blessed to be able to write and direct on the rise of Governor Sarah Palin, will be in Walmart, Target, Best Buy this Tuesday in DVD. Todd, when the film starts off, you guys are you have a small commercial fishing vessel, and you and Governor Palin are actually running that as a commercial business. I have heard we were blessed to have Chuck Heath on the other night. He says that his attitude about you changed when he had to work for you as on the fishing boat. That you are known up there as a guy that's very focused when it comes to fishing. Can you tell us about that?
Well, I was blessed to grow up in Bristol Bay, where my family's generation of commercial fishermen. So as a child, 8, 9 years old, I'm out there on the beach helping my grandparents or mother, and just been in the fishing industry all my life. So when you start out that young, you know that the fish are only going to be here for a few weeks, so you have to work around the clock and work as hard as possible. But we still continue to fish, and we're passing it on to our kids. Our oldest son is running it now, but it's a great way to grow up. Nothing. Hard work is healthy, positive.
A couple things. Number, Track had actually served in combat in Iraq and is now returned. He had one combat tour over there, or was it two?
One
combat tour, and he's back now, and he's actually taken over the family's fishing business, correct?
Pretty much the last 2 years. This summer he had it all to himself. I didn't even make it over there.
I take it that is, if you do that, I take it Track did that with you when he was a young man growing up then, right?
All the kids, Sarah's family, through different years, they've been over fishing with us because we like to let everybody experience commercial fishing out there with us. And, Chuck was out there a year. He had a good time. He's a hard worker.
The film starts off, and when we start off, it's Exxon Valdez. You actually are part Native Alaskan, correct? What is? Can you give us something to talk about your family's background?
Well, I'm a Native descendant. My mom's Native, my grandmother's Native, and they grew up in Bristol Bay fishing, and we talk about Exxon Valdez storing all the oil and around the native villages in that area. Is pretty sad because it just devastated fishing. So this was March of '89, and in the summer of '88 I fished late into the season because I didn't have a very good year, but the price of fish at that time, the summer of '88, I was getting $2.35 a pound cash, and then the following summer I think the price dropped to 75 cents a pound, even though we're several hundred miles away from Exxon Valdez.
Wow.
There was just that excuse of all of Alaska salmon was tainted. So that was pretty hard to deal with, and then it took several years to build that price back up.
Well, and Exxon Valdez wasn't exactly forthcoming with helping out, right? It's one of the things I think inspired Governor Palin, that the Exxon Valdez, first off, it decimated the fishing. What wasn't actually polluted, guys like yourself that may not have been affected by pollution directly, had the market absolutely implode because of people just didn't want to say, "Oh, Alaskan salmon, I can't touch that. It's got oil in it," right?
No, these are fishing communities. They've been fishing communities for many, many years, and through many generations, and so it's a huge shock. But and that's your livelihood. But Exxon Valdez is long lawsuits for over 20 years, and the sad part is that you had over 6,000 defendants that passed away and never solved the end of the case.
6,000 people that were affected that somehow were tied up in the litigation, but
Yep.
had basically died before anything that came to fruition with Exxon.
That's correct.
That's terrible. What now? How did you get? You actually moved to Wasilla. How old were you when you actually moved there?
We moved to Wasilla my senior year in high school. So coming from a small school at that time, I was living in interior Alaska, Glen Allen, and went from a real small school to a larger school. So it was a big step for me, but I was pretty gifted basketball player, so I was really looking forward to playing in a bigger school with more competition.
Now, is it, what Chuck said, and Chuck is Governor Palin's brother, Chuck Heath. He was saying that you were not just a great team sports player like basketball, but that it's shortly thereafter that you really became involved in the Iron Dog. Can you describe what the Iron Dog is? Because the way he described it to our audience the other night was absolutely unbelievable about the difficulty, the length of this, the time of year you do it. Could you just tell our audience what exactly is the Iron Dog?
Well, I grew up on snow machines. My dad told me that if I could start that snow machine in the yard, then I could drive it. So I'd get all my neighbor buddies, kids around, and then we'd start it and we'd drive it. So
how old were you? I take it.
Probably, 6 or 7 years old. But when you talk about Alaska, most people are familiar with the Iditarod. And that goes from Anchorage to Nome on dog sled, dog team. The old Serum Run. And so
Yes.
Back in 1984, there's a couple guys that wanted to participate, follow that trail on snow machines. So from 84 to 93, it was, Anchorage to Nome, and then they'd alternate years. And then in 1993, they made it a 2,000-mile race where you go from Anchorage to Nome and back. So it's 2,274 miles. On snow machines, there's two snow machines.
2,200 miles would be basically going from Maine almost to New Mexico, right? You'd be the United States, I think, is roughly 3,000 miles across, 26 or something, but it's almost going the breadth of the United States, correct? Roughly.
Correct.
And you're doing this not on a summer's day. This would be it's in February.
It's in February, but you have two snow machines, two racers. You have mandatory safety gear. I think so far this year we have 20, 25 teams signed up. But it's one of those Alaskan events that really doesn't get too much national attention. In the last few years, we've had some film crews. National Geographic was out last year filming the Iron Dog pilots because we'll have. Some teams have airplane support that could land at the airports at some of the villages. But I started this race in '93, and I've been hooked ever since. Just that's my, what a guy does for a week of vacation.
But you have to train. I mean, because you're alternating with a driving partner because you're basically going 24/7. I take it there is some downtime to be able to sleep.
No, you're driving with your partner. You're out there in the middle of nowhere. That's why there's two of you on two snow machines. I mean, so you've got a partner for safety. I mean, but you're a team.
Now, what Chuck was telling us, it's in the dead of night. It's often 30 or 40 below zero. You often can't see the moose or what's ever in front of you. How dangerous is this? Chuck told us a story that you actually hit a semi-submerged 55-gallon drum and broke your arm. Was it 2 years ago?
Yeah, it was a few years ago, and as many times as I've raced this, I've wrecked a few, but that was the worst wreck. And most guys, you try not to wreck. You try not to drive, out of control, but things happen. And
so this thing is quite. What's the worst accident that's happened on the Iron Dog?
We've been lucky. I mean, guys breaking legs, and I think one guy broke his hip. But no, we're out in the elements. 55, 60 below, driving down the Yukon River, doing 90, 95, 100 miles an hour. It gets a little nippy, but it's a great event. Every year the event is growing, getting more sponsors. We've had a women's team finish it, but there's a wide range of participants from 18 years old all the way up into their late 60s, so it's a lot of fun.
Todd, tell us about the tell us about Track. Track, he went into the military and he came back, and was his love for fishing that had him take over the business? I mean, what was his motivation? He loved it so much, or he saw it as a business opportunity?
Well, Track grew up, fishing on the boat, as a young kid, and he was quite the hockey player, so sometimes hockey would get into fishing. But you graduate from high school, which he spent, the last few months of his senior year out in Michigan playing hockey. But graduated, he was working, going to college, and then decided
he went to this junior hockey system that potentially you could turn pro. Is that
it was just midget AAA,
right.
But on a little higher scale competition than what we could offer here in Alaska. But we do have some teams that play in that same league. But you graduate from high school, you're going to college, you're working, and then he decided, and he's always talked about joining the military. And then he enlisted and went out and went boot camp and everything, and did his time in Iraq. And I'm sure while you're away from home, you think about the stuff that you miss. And,
yes.
He was thinking about being on a boat, picking fish and making money. And so when he came home, he was just really looking forward to getting back on the boat and picking fish and being with the guys and making some money.
Well, listen, you got to be very proud of him. I know that anybody in that generation, it's a tough to volunteer. It's particularly tough to volunteer when you're in combat. Todd, listen, thank you very much for joining us tonight. I really appreciate it as the filmmaker when I hear guys call me from the country and saying that hey, Todd Palin's answer to any question about the governor is go watch The Undefeated. That's you can't get a better advertisement than that, and we're very excited about the film coming out into DVD this week. And we want to thank you, Chuck Heath, your brother-in-law, Governor Palin's brother, and telling us the stories about the Iron Dog. We had so many of our viewers call up and say, or email me and say, we got to hear Todd tell us some stories on that. It's been great for you to share it with us tonight. We really appreciate you coming on the show.
Well, Steve, thanks for having me. I can't thank you enough for producing The Undefeated and the people that were involved, the Alaskans that were involved in The Undefeated. They did an outstanding job because it's so much about Alaska, and just to be able to showcase our state and what our state could offer. The best jobs plan today would be to open up Anwar. There's so much there, 3 square miles, so much oil. And I just thank you for shining a light on our state and showing some of Sarah's record. You know what,
Todd, before we wrap up here, I think it's very important is that it was obviously a team effort, and I think that was very important of the governor to pull that team together. And one of the things is that when people ask me about Governor Palin, what I found out is that the one thing I found out is that how modest and humble she is. When we went back and looked for footage of her really talking about herself and her record, it's very rare to find, and that's one of the pleasures of doing the film is that she led a team. I mean, she was a leader of a group that came together for the betterment of the state. It pulled people together. Clearly, the results were overwhelming public support, legislative support, and really moved the ball down the field for the good of Alaska. So it was I think it was a very unique period of time, and I think that's why people. I think we had Adnan Gardardash on here from the New York Times, who wrote that great article about Governor Palin's speech in Iowa. And he said, look, as more people, look at her record, they're increasingly impressed when you really drill down on it. No pun intended. You see someone of incredible accomplishment, and that's one of the reasons it inspired me to do the film. That the more time you spend, looking at Governor Palin's record, you realize that she was not Caribou Barbie, but a very engaged political leader who led a team of very motivated people to great ends. And that's, I think, what it is when people see the film and they come away and they say, boy, I never knew that about her, and I'm really impressed. So it was a great pleasure to make it, and a great honor and one of the highlights of so far of getting to meet you and get to know you and the governor better.
Yeah, well, Con Bundy, Rick Halford, Meg Stapleton, Marty Rutherford, Tom Irwin, Tom Van Flyne, and all the others that you had on the show. I mean, just Alaskans, and Alaskans at heart. And, with her leadership, I mean, they just buckled down, and it was business. And when you move forward and you want to make change, you're going to piss people off, but Sarah doesn't care.
That's why she's the undefeated. Todd Palin, thank you very much for being on the Victory Sessions. Greatly appreciated, sir.
Thank you much, Steve.
Bye.